I spent over $300 on 50 broken original Xbox controllers to see how many I was able to fix. I also wanted to show you what you might expect to see when you bought your own broken controllers to fix up for your own collection. Let's jump into it. I got these online and had to purchase them in 2 separate batches. One small one and one much larger one. I spent a total of $338.93 including shipping for these, and one of the sellers even threw in a free game. But what am I supposed to do with a loose copy of Madden 08 for PS2? Leave a comment down below for what you would do with this copy. But these controllers look like they have a full range of issues with them. Damaged thumbsticks, busted and missing cords, and some broken housings to top it all off. Besides, some of them smell extra funky, which I'm sure will be a dream to clean later. Stay tuned for the full breakdown of everything I find at the end. But first up, testing. We have to know what's wrong with the items in order to know what to fix. And there's only one acceptable method to test these, and that's an old copy of Halo. Ah, the memories. As I'm going through these, I'm going to label and separate them based on the issues that they present with. I like to use a Sharpie with blue painter's tape because it's not too sticky and it's a great temporary label. But right away I found some interesting issues to dig into later, like these units. This either is a damaged circuit board or it's a prototype one-handed controller that I'm not aware of. You decide. I don't even know what to do with this. And shortly thereafter, I found this one.
Well, I found a good one. Maybe this one was kicked because of the thumbstick, because it is a little bit worn. But if I have extra thumbsticks when it's all said and done, after fixing all of these other ones, maybe I'll replace this one. But hey, this one's good.
But many of these had damaged cords, and since I'm replacing them anyway, I'm going to cut them off now to save me some time on labeling. I have to mention it, but if you do any testing of your own controllers, Sega GT has a controller stick testing function built into the options menu of the game. Just select calibration under the options menu and you'll be able to test out each of your stick's functions. Now it's unfortunate that it doesn't test the rest of the buttons, but it does give you a good look to see if the sticks drift at all. This is what a good controller looks like during testing. And this is what a bad controller with a lot of drift looks like. It's basically just stuck completely to one side. Now there are varying degrees of drift, of course, and another bad example is this one. You can see it's just a little off to the top right and it never really recenters itself. But enough testing, now let's get into some fixing. I'm going to start with the easy stuff first. Broken or damaged thumbstick ends. Luckily I just picked up a bunch of these stick ends from XYAB that are specifically for the original Xbox controller. You can still use Xbox 360 sticks too, but these are near exact replacements since they are a little bit more flat and not as bulbous as the 360 versions. And it's a good thing I have these because there are some that are in desperate need of replacement. I'm not only replacing the stick ends on these, but I'm also giving the insides a good cleaning with isopropyl alcohol. Broken rubber pieces, bugs, and plenty of dust or hair can get inside and cause drift issues, so I want to make sure that these units are as clean as possible before testing them again. I also may uncover other issues like this one where it needs a new cord since it's cracked at the cord's stress relief point. A quick cord change and it's looking much better. Still needs some heavy cleaning on the outside, but that's going to be a solve later problem. The rest of these went well, and if one stick end was still good, I saved it so I could use it on another one as soon as I had a good match. If you're interested in a more in-depth look into all of these fixes I'm showing here, be sure to check out these other videos on my channel. Now what to do with the broken housing. I've fixed many of these controllers in the past and just happen to have an original replacement shell to swap with this one. The only problem is it takes too long to show you how to do it, so I'll just, there we go. Even the sticks got changed too. Nice. Now we are on to the combo units. Ones that need thumbsticks and have bad cords as well. I give these the same treatment as the other ones and clean the guts as well as swapping out the old busted parts. Even got into a few of the Duke controllers too. These need some extra care when opening since the shells have gotten very brittle over the years. You need to be extra careful when opening them and go very slowly. Even if you do, it still might crack like this one did. But all good things must come to an end because I found my first controller with an infestation. I should have already known by the semi-sweet, musty, dead-rotting corpse smell when I picked this one up that it would have had roaches inside of it. These are by far my least favorite repairs when I run into them. Thankfully, these are all dead and this controller just needs some very deep cleaning. But for those of you that have yet to run into these little friends, this is what they do to the insides of electronic items. They like to leave behind corpses, egg casings, and what looks like coffee grounds stuck to everything. The only problem is it's not coffee grounds. I'd much prefer that actually. But all of this needs to be cleaned and sanitized heavily. This one took a lot of extra time and it's exactly why I put down sheets of paper towel when working on controllers. It's easy to clean up and no need to deep clean my workstation every time afterwards either. And believe it or not, this is the same controller. I haven't cleaned the outside yet, but the insides are at least done. Now on to some testing. Alright, first batch of controllers that I just retested, and all of them are good. So, I'm gonna get these all cleaned up and move on to the next batch. Alright, just got done with this second batch and retested them all. They're all good. Just need to clean them up like the other ones and move on to the next ones. Now we are getting into some interesting ones. It's rare, but sometimes parts do go bad over time. It might be from overuse, or maybe they had a small defect from the factory that made the part die faster than it normally should. Regardless, it's always nice to have some spare parts on hand in case you need something. A perfect example is with this scrap controller I have. The board is cracked and it's too badly damaged to fix, but the other parts on it are still good, and I just so happen to need a right trigger assembly. After the swap, it was working great again. Another one? Same problem, but different root cause. This one has some lifted pads on the board since after testing it with a multimeter, I wasn't getting any signals from several of the soldered in trigger points. Now we just need to find where these points go to and patch the traces so that they are whole again. I'm going to be using some magnet wire for these repairs and testing my scrap board to find the correct trace pass for each of these signals. Two of the traces are broken and I ran a small bit of wire to reconnect these to the proper locations again. Added a little Kapton tape to hold the wires in place and the testing went well. Another broken trace perhaps? A somewhat common issue is traces peeling away from the board. It's not always easy to see, but thankfully with the use of a multimeter, it's easy to determine the breaks, especially when they are on the sticks. If you think about the areas of the controller that get the most use, the sticks and the triggers have a lot of stress on them. So broken traces are more likely to form related to these components than others. I found the bottom right pin of this stick had a crack on the trace that is just really tough to see. When testing it with enough pressure, it would still test good, but wasn't consistently connecting well enough. So an extension of the solder from the pin across the damaged trace fixed the issue right up. This one has multiple issues as well. The face buttons aren't working, and the click in on the right stick feels very weird and it doesn't activate either. Upon further examination, the inside is very dirty. Not sure what this is, but it looks like this unit was in a flood or dropped in mud at the very least. I gave it a good cleaning and used some graphite on the black button pads that weren't working to see if that would help the situation. The stick unfortunately is damaged and requires a replacement. But before I get into that, I just want to make sure that these face buttons are working. And unfortunately, they are not. I did some additional probing and found nothing wrong with the traces, so maybe the conductive black material went bad or it has some debris underneath it. Unfortunately, I don't have any to use as a replacement, so this unit is scrapped for now. Now we moved on to some drift issues. I know this doesn't need to be said, but this is one of the most common issues in gaming today. Luckily, it's also relatively easy to fix on these Xbox controllers too. I like to pop out the potentiometer discs inside the sticks and give them a good cleaning. 9 times out of 10, this will fix the drift issues, especially if it's a small, slow drift. This removes any debris as well as buildup on the metal parts so they can track a little bit better. Drifting and a trace repair, you say? Well, we've already covered both the drifting with the last controller repair and issues with the trigger not working properly a few controllers ago. This should be no different, and it wasn't. A little cleaning on the sticks and some trace testing with a solder patch later, and it was good to go. The only problem is that this shell is damaged and I don't have a good replacement for it currently. So this one is fixed, but sadly not 100% usable unless you like the feeling of rumble motors directly touching your hands, or other parts while it's gently sitting in your lap. Well, that's definitely broken. And rather than use any new parts, I'm going to pull a stick from my scrap board and use that instead. It's always good to use original parts where possible. New sticks aren't as good as the old versions, and even though I do swap in new sticks sometimes, I try to use the old ones as much as possible. This one is less of a repair and more of a general lubing of parts. The right stick hesitates when moving and doesn't appear to have anything majorly wrong with it at all. The inside of the stick appears to be catching and isn't moving as freely as it should be. So add some lube. Grease that baby up so it's super smooth and then wipe away the excess. Don't want that to get into the pots since that can cause drifting. Which is exactly the problem with the next 8 controllers, in addition to having some terrible thumbsticks or missing cords that needed to be replaced. So all of those got done in record time since it was all the same fixes. But now we can move on to the last group in this lot of 50, the ones with the dreaded no connection issue. This is typically caused by a bad cord, and this first Duke controller has that exact issue. It has a very obvious flat spot on the cord from being bent too far, most likely from wrapping the cords around the controller for storage. Over time it bends too much and these wires inside the cord break or don't have a good enough connection and won't connect to the console at all. This one also happens to have more musty infestation residue, but at least it doesn't have any dead roaches inside of it like the first one. Now this is an example of the other no connection issue. The cord still appears to be in good shape, but I swapped it anyway just to see if it had some unseen damage, but still no connection when plugged in. I tested the board and couldn't find any bad traces either. So my best guess is that this unit has a bad chip on its board. Very rare, but I've seen it before, and there's not much that you can do about it. It also has a damaged housing, which kind of sucks, but this one's slated for scrap anyway. The rest of these no connection issues just turned out to be bad cords, which is a relief. At least they were fixable and not junked. Alright, got another batch of 12, and they are all good. Just need to clean them up. This is the last good batch. These all tested well, and just need some additional cleaning. But now let's see the final breakdown of all the numbers. What can you expect to see when buying a non-working controller? And how much did all of this cost in time and money? First up, the top defects. I don't know if this will be a surprise to anyone, but thumbsticks needing to be replaced are the #1 issue with buying broken controllers. I had 32 out of the 50 units needing at least one stick end to be replaced in order for it to be usable again. This equals out to a 64% chance of occurrence in this batch. For those of you who remove the stick ends on purpose and don't consider this a defect, you were all monsters and we can't be friends. Just kidding, I love you all who watch my videos. Maybe the raw stick people just a little bit less though. But moving on, the second most common defect was bad cords, which honestly is kind of surprising to me. I thought drift issues would be the second for sure, but maybe this does make sense. Exactly 50% of the controllers, or 25 units, needed a new cord, which is still a considerable amount. Third on this list are issues with sticks drifting. Only 24%, or 12 total units from this batch, had this problem. Now there was quite a large gap between the top 3 defects and the remaining 6. It's just good to note that these issues can still be present, but the odds of coming across them in mass are 6% or less in most cases. But bad sticks and damaged housings are very visible, so those are a bit easier to avoid if you're shopping at flea markets or rummage sales looking for some deals. Also, it's not a defect, but I included the good controller on here just to show that sometimes you'll get good items mixed in naturally. Some people don't know how to properly test items, and you may find perfectly good units amongst bad ones. But now, how long did this take and what's the real number totals? I worked a total of 17 hours on these controllers, which encompassed 3.5 hours of testing and 13.5 hours for fixing and reassembly. I didn't count the time it took to clean the outside of the controllers, but maybe budget an additional hour or so for that. 47 total units were fixed, 2 were set aside for scrap, and 1 was good, as you already know. The total broken cost for these was $338.93, and I spent roughly $132.54 on spare parts. This was all for the cords, thumbsticks, and quick disconnect ends. Now if I were to sell all of these good controllers, the larger Duke units and the special blue and green colored units are roughly $30 each online. The regular black S controllers are about $25 per piece, which would bring the total sell value to about $1,265, not including the other scrap controllers. Total profit based on that number is $793.53, and that brings the hourly rate for fixing these units to $46.68. Now I know this doesn't include any selling or shipping costs for any of the major online selling platforms, but since those costs do vary, I didn't want to include those in the total. I still think this is a pretty good rate, and even if you took a lot of extra time to fix the controllers, or there was a lot of extra fees, I still think it would be worth it in the end. But I'd love to know what you think in the comments below. Would you have fixed these, and what do you think of the results? But as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.